Wilderness Resource Committee meeting to order at 4:30. Would you all rise, please? Gracious Heavenly Father, we come today to do our meetings, Lord, and we thank you for the nice, beautiful rain we had here a while ago. Lord, be with us as we go through our community meetings and give us knowledge, Lord, and give us understanding. And be with us all as we travel home tonight. Thank you, Lord, for everything. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Amen. Calling, we'll move down to roll call.
Curtis Snell.
Here.
Frankie Hargis.
Present.
Jack Baker.
Here.
Harley Buzzard.
Here.
Joe Bird.
Money.
Julia Coates. Here. Jody Fishinghawk. Janelle Fulbright. Sean Garvin. Hannah Glory Jordan.
Present.
Lee Keener.
Money.
Dick Lay.
Here.
Denise Taylor. Here. David Thornton.
Present.
Victoria Vesquez.
Johnny.
David Walkingstick.
Hey.
Kara Cowan Watts.
Honey.
John Mashman. We have a quorum.
Need approval of the April 14th regular session.
Make a motion to be approved.
Got a motion? And a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Moving on down to reports of management resources. Bruce Davis.
Good to see everybody here today.
Hello.
We have a few projects going on, as you well know, and so the clinics are going, the new tag office is underway, so I'll be glad to answer any questions that you might have. We're on
Questions for Bruce?
a short time frame.
The tag office, are we already moved in there?
No, sir, we're not. We've let bids out for the new roof, and if you don't know where it's at, it's the Oak Hill Restaurant. We're doing the interior now and going to put a new roof, new siding, new HVAC, and so we're hoping to be in there in the next 60 days.
That's good.
Council Lady Watts?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Where are we at? Did you say all the hay's been sold?
I believe so. We've got a few bales left.
I was gonna say, because you can visually see hay from the road, so I didn't know.
They haven't picked it all up yet.
Okay.
Yes, it's
And
been, I think they've, it's been promised, right?
Right. It's all, basically, it's all been paid for, and, we're, pretty well got it all sold. We're 48 bales right now, what showing on the books that we haven't sold. But
48.
48 bales. But everything else has been paid for. We haven't got it removed yet. People moving it, some of them bought as many as 100 plus, and so they're hauling 30 or 40 at a time.
Okay.
So, anyway, but it's pretty well all been paid for.
Okay, thank you. And where are the Buffalo at? Where are we at on that?
GB went to Bozeman, Montana last week, I believe, and met with those people, and we're anticipating a contract to have the buffalo brought in this fall.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Dick.
How many bales of hay did you have?
Almost 2,000 bales.
And if GB needs somebody to help him drive to Montana this summer, let me know.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Dick.
Yes. Janice?
A new completion date on Jack Brown.
Oh, I think it says May, and we're real close. So,
Any day now.
we're having a problem we're working with the city on getting the sewer line in, and we had to put a frac tank in, and so that's kind of holding us up a little bit, but we're not too far behind.
Council Lady Jordan?
Yes, how many buffalo are going back there?
We don't really know yet, Ms. Tyna. We're assuming from 25 to 125, somewhere in that ballpark. That's a possibility, okay?
It's a big range,
It is. Yes.
but they're going to Delaware County.
Well, we're not sure.
I'm going to Adair County.
We'll talk more offline.
Yes.
Armquist.
See, Council, let's see, Garvin? Councilman Garvin?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Are these cows, bulls, or yearlings, or what?
There'll be a Duke's mixture, Mr. Garvin, yes.
Mostly old cows?
There'll be some young cows, some calves, and some bulls, yes, sir.
One other question. What's the plans for the old council house, or what are we doing there?
The old council house, you know, we don't really have a definite plan. When we moved out of there, it needs to be abated, needs a new roof. As y'all remember, it leaked very bad. The water and the trash buckets were everywhere, so when they tell us what they want to do with it, then we'll proceed.
Those buckets still over there?
Yes, they are.
They're still working?
Yeah, they're still catching water. Probably a lot of it right now.
They may be full.
Be glad you're not over there.
Yeah, we are.
We have more questions for Bruce? Yes, Harley?
Yeah, I want to just kind of bring the committee up to date a little bit about our garden project. Bruce's department, we've got a garden starting in Jay in Delaware County, so we hope this thing spreads out. I think with a pilot project like this, I think it's going to expand. The other thing I want to bring to the committee and to Bruce, to the department, is I just saw that the Squapaw tribe actually are built or have got 4 greenhouses for raising vegetables, tomatoes, cucumbers, radish, anything you do with vegetables. And what they're going to do is supply all their casinos with those fresh fruits. The other thing they're doing is getting in the cattle market to produce beef to expand to their casinos and to restaurants. So I think we need to look back, talk about economic development, jobs. These things can create jobs, even for people that may not have an education to do. They can raise this type of stuff. We have several people that need those type of jobs, especially where I live. The buffalo, you know, I'm excited about getting the buffalo, so I hope this goes ahead and manages. And I'm just talking about, you know, down the line somewhere that we need to look at the USDA of getting an approval on the beef, on the buffalo. And also look at maybe twist some arms with C&E, CNB about getting some this stuff into our casino. This can be done. There's a project already out there that Brahms, they do all their stuff. So I don't know why the Cherokee Nation can't do it with our resources that we have. It's something that's just waiting to happen, I believe. So anyway, Bruce, I think you're doing a good job as far as our natural resources go, and keep up the good work.
Thank you, Harley.
Thank you.
I've got some good help. Got some good people working for me.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
More questions?
I have a comment.
Yes.
GB, I know you've looked at some of these type of projects, about what Councilor Buzzer just talked about. Is this something that we're going to pursue or do some type of studies already out there if our neighboring tribes are doing it?
Oh, yes, I looked into it, and Bruce and I, we sat down, we talked, we went to a meeting, a USDA meeting this past week at Sulphur, Oklahoma for 2 days. Met with the USDA down there and got update on the farm bill that's been approved and everything. There's a lot of grants out there available for agriculture, especially for the crops. And so we're pursuing all those, and the buffalo, it's been put away. It's in hands of the people up there in Bozeman with the Yellowstone bison, and we should know something May the 31st when they're going to review our app. And then the grant that we proposed, we're waiting on intertribal buffalo to see what we rewarded. But Bruce is right on the buffalo. There's 134 buffalo available through the Yellowstone deal, so we could get that. The agriculture deal, we'd probably be moving on to cows now if it wasn't for the tribal lands being leased and obligated into the year 2015-16. So in January of 16, we're going to be looking this coming year at 15 lands possible that would make a good range for the cattle. And we're talking, and you know, I don't want to say anything about CMB or anything, but we need to get a phone call from them about maybe moving forward on the beef and their financing. So that is a possibility there. So it's a lot of contacts been made, a lot of things have been done, but with the cattle deal, Bruce and I are really pro to the cattle versus the buffalo. We'd like to see it move forward on that, but our hands are kind of tied with the land that we need to put out there to address Harley's needs and everything about furnishing the beef with the casinos and everything like that. We're gonna have to have several hundred head if we're gonna do this. And so I know the market's high. It's high to get into the business, but it also in return, your calves will bring $1,000 versus $400 from a couple years ago. So, you know, it's a very profitable deal to get into. It will supply jobs. It will create avenues to sell the red meat. And so we're really working on that. And then the garden he talked about, we started it up there, and it's underway big time, and we're going to expand on that and maybe get our fruits and vegetables into the casinos. So that's where we're at right now in natural resources and with our cattle and everything. So it's not a dead issue. It's a very alive issue. We're working on it, trying to, when the year 2016 rolls around, we want to be in position for pens and facilities already in place, ready to go. All we need is the cattle.
Are we talking about from the start, raising them, slaughterhouse, all of that, or we just?
Possibility, you know, we'll have to work with the in-house slaughterhouses within our nation, which with the two that's approved, USDA approved, you know, are in our tribal areas, so, you know, it'd be a good deal.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good report. GB.
Any more questions for Bruce? Moving on down to real estate services. Thank you, Bruce. Good report. Moving on down to real estate services, Ginger Brown.
Good afternoon.
Good.
You have my report in front of you. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Yes, Kara.
Thank you. Federal building, where are we at with that?
I haven't addressed it since we have, since our last meeting here regarding Claremore Federal Building.
Are we still trying to pursue it?
Not from my office, we are not.
Okay, so it is no longer on the table then?
It's no longer on the table or on the report.
Okay, I just wanted to.
Right.
Okay, I didn't understand that, so thank you. There were some questions about, so if we have leased property, whether it's tribal trust property or individual restricted land, for cattle, does it allow any Cherokee just to go on and hunt deer, even though it's already leased?
They can walk on, but they cannot drive on.
They can walk
They
on
can walk
and
on.
hunt, regardless if it's leased or it's there for another purpose.
They can walk on. And our leases state that as well. They can walk on to gather wild onions or watercress or whatever, but they aren't, as long as they're a tribal citizen, but they're not allowed to drive on.
Okay, can they deer hunt? They can also,
We have hunting leases that, in certain areas.
what if it's leased for cattle and you have deer hunters that come on, either archery, cat and ball, whatever, there's an actual weapon involved. Are they allowed to do that, or do they have to?
That's a fine line with the wildlife code. I'm not for sure where we stand on the wildlife code, but we always try to assure that if that is going on, that they contact our lessees. Many times they will contact Realty Services.
Okay, that's what I needed. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any more questions for Ginger? Yes, no.
Ginger, are you familiar with that situation out of Utah with Mr. Bundy?
I guess I'm not, Councilman Garvin.
Well, it's kind of a standoff on grazing rights for the federal land, and I just wondered if we ever got into something like that, how we'd handle it. But it's kind of way out there in the dark. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Harley?
Ginger, you're familiar with the Oak Hill Community Building there in Delaware County?
Yes, I am.
Is that still under the BIA control as far as the old building?
Yes, it is.
It is. And I know this has been brought up several years. Are we trying to get that from the Bureau, or what is that?
They're willing to give it to us in fee. That's one of the old day schools that they are willing to give it to us in fee. We just need a resolution. I talked just last week to BIA about that about those schools, to send a resolution and to get that accomplished, if we want to take them in fee.
But we'd have to take it in fee, though.
We would have to take a fee. That's what, it took them several years to determine, approximately 30 years to determine that. It was somewhat of the same, that public law, 599, wasn't it? That they tried to bring the day schools into fee, but since the past 30 years, that's what they've been trying to do. We were denied that one. Rocky Ford was one of them that they did allow, because it was only for interest.
So if we got it in fee, could we go back and put it into trust?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Councilor Watts?
I was just gonna ask, what's the acreage on
On the
that? Oak Hill?
Oak Hill,
Yeah, the one he's talking about.
okay, at Delaware County.
Yeah.
I'm thinking it's around 10 acres. I think that's the one that's 10 acres. There's 7, but I believe it's around 10 acres.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Councilor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There's been some questions raised, and I don't know if it's because this group's posted it on their website and it's being misinterpreted. So I'm trying to get to the facts to see if I can respond to some folks. But the Natchez Nation has posted on their website apparently that they are seeking land into trust with us, or a lease on land into trust or something. And it's been raised to me and they're asking, and I meant to email this to you and ask you, are we leasing to Natchez Nation Tribal Trust property?
We do not have a lease with the Natchez Nation. No, we don't have any land available for leasing at this time. All of our leases are up December of 2016.
December of 2016. December
30th.
Okay. And I think that the gentleman that runs that group, or however you want to refer to it, is a tribal citizen, and his name's Hutke Bill. So
Oh, I know what you're talking about.
So we are doing something maybe with them?
No, we are not. I know the individual that you're speaking of, yes.
Okay.
I'm familiar with who you're talking about.
Okay. Thank you. That answers my questions, because there were several constituents that had sent me notes, and I didn't know how to answer them, so thank you. Thank you. And they posted on their website.
Any more questions for Ginger? Yes, Dick.
Got one, and it's now out of my area, but I'll ask it anyway. The land that we're going to use for the casino near South Coffeyville, and the land that holds the community building in South Coffeyville, which one of those is the BIA not willing to put into trust?
There's a fee to trust application on the South Coffeyville Community Building. And there's not been a decision made of them not going to put it into trust. The state of Oklahoma has made a response, is my understanding, but I expect those on any fee to trust that we put in.
And the other property is going through smoothly
On,
the South Coffeyville property for the casino?
that's being worked on as well. It's not a trust property.
It's not yet. Is it going to be trust or restricted?
That's a restricted property.
But it's not restricted yet.
That is a restricted property. Yes, sir.
When did that happen?
I would have to get my notes on that.
So it's now
I'd be happy
gone-
to get,
It is now gone into
information to you.
restricted status?
I can get that information and get it to you.
Okay. Thank you.
Ginger, if it's in restriction status, it's always been in restriction status, is it not, since statehood, or
Not necessarily.
put it back in restriction for individual or tribe?
If your land was condemned and you had restricted property, with those monies, you can put those monies into an IAM account and buy another piece of property that was in fee status. At that time, it would become restricted.
trying to put it in trust?
We're not trying to do
No,
that,
we're
no.
not.
That's two separate pieces of property. That's two transactions.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Any more questions with Ginger? Thank you, ma'am. Good report. Moving on down to environmental program, Tom Elkins.
Good afternoon.
Hi.
Not so bad. You have our report, just a couple notes from that. We had our annual environmental festival a little bit early this year, worked with several of the groups within the nation to have it take off, and we had over 300 people, staff, and other folks, worked with federal, state, and other entities. Had 100, I'm told, kids from the immersion classes come in through there, and then other outside schools that came through. I wasn't able to attend. I was giving a talk or doing something else out of town at the time. And so I was at the Intertribal. That's where I was at. And so I did not get to attend, but our folks kind of filtered in and out so that we had folks at our office and over there at all day long, and then through to the cleanup. And then just another note that some of you may know, one of our directors, Bobby Short, he left, and he's still with the nation, but he's at Cherokee Nation Businesses, so he's working with the for-profit part of the Cherokee Nation. So he's out of our group now, and what we've done is taken the programs that were under his group and put them in under some of our other directors. So we have been up to 40-some staff members, and now we're down to, I think, 33. So it's kind of worked out well. We had at one time 4 directors with various programs under each of those, and now we're down to 3 and a manager of administrative operations. So it seems to work well that way. And if you have any questions, I'll be happy to elaborate on it.
Any questions with Tom?
Good job, Tom.
Thank you.
Sir. Moving on down to the Veterans Building update, Bruce Davis. Mr. Davis?
We're working on a few things that the program wants, that since they've been in, had some needs that they want us to address. All we really lack right now is the footing, foundation for the statue. Other than that, it's pretty much closed out.
Well, any questions from David? When are you gonna finish, David? Tomorrow?
They're in there. They're operating.
Where's the flag coming?
That's not my department, the flag, but I can find out for you.
Okay, David.
Now, I think they're having something here, what, next week or two?
23rd,
Yeah, yeah, so,
you'll be ready.
yes, sir. Oh, yeah. Yeah, they're in and operating out of it, so, I mean, it's, just a couple little punch list items, but right now, mainly, we're just working on things that they want, that, they didn't, wasn't in the construction part of it at first, but just trying to make them where they can do their job, better.
Does he have a full-fledged kitchen in there where they can serve?
No.
Was that something that we're going to do later?
It was always intended just to be a warming,
Okay.
area. I mean, a refrigerator, sink, counter space. But, we've kind of looked at a few things. It's pretty expensive just to put a kitchen in the commercial. I think a Vent-A-Hood alone, commercial's like $5,000-$6,000 just for the hood, not the installation or anything. So, yeah,
Any
Thank you,
questions for
Mr.
David? David, you're excused, sir. Good.
Thank you.
Good job. Moving on down to old business, 14041. Carrie, you want to take that?
Mr. Chairman, could we excuse me, I would like to make a motion to table this for 1 month, please.
Second.
Okay, we got a motion and a second to table? Or do we get a second? Motion and a second. All in favor of table?
Aye.
All opposed?
Aye.
Roll call? Yes to table, no not to table? I guess we'll do it.
Brandon Burgess. No. Anna Gloria Jordan.
No.
Lee Keener.
Yes.
Dick Lay. Curtis Snell.
No.
Janice Taylor. Yes. David Thornton.
No.
Victoria Vasquez.
No.
David Walkenstick.
No.
Kara Cowan Watts.
Yes.
Jack Baker.
Yes.
Harley Buzzard.
Yes.
Joe Byrd.
No.
Julia Coates.
Yes.
Jody Fishinghawk.
No.
Janelle Fulbright. No. Ron Garvin.
Yes.
We have 7 yes and 9 no.
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
And Mr. Keener seconded me.
We got a motion and a second to approve.
Discussion second.
Discussion. I'd like to have Ginger Brown come. to the-
So according to Tribal Council Rules and Procedures, as the sponsor, I have the first opportunity to not only make the motion, but also to speak, is what I recall.
Yeah.
Is
There's
it-
a motion and a second, yeah,
to
we're in
introduce it.
discussion now.
Mr. Chairman. So in order to introduce it, I'm simply, yes, there will be a cost, but government comes at a cost. And I'm asking that before we acquire property, that there is an independent appraisal of that property done so that folks can evaluate whether we are paying the right amount for land or not. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I'd like to ask, Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Yes, sir.
Ginger, the pros and cons of this. I know, one thing I do know after all these years, when the private sector sees that the Cherokees are interested in property, and we all know what happens there. And I just hate divulging a lot of our business when we're in the process of purchasing land now. Just give me the pros and cons of how you guys would handle this, and what do you recommend us? 'Cause you guys are right in the middle of it.
Well, we receive anywhere from 3 to 5 phone calls and/or visits per week. And I know various other people in administration as well as realty receive them. Right now, we have a system and trying to get a policy and procedure drafted. And because we noted some of the inconsistencies that throughout the years of the buying of the property. We've been working on the real property acquisition procedure, and we've tried it out on the past couple of acquisitions that were performed. Basically, the inquiry is received. It's sent to the administrative support for a preliminary assessment, and then a formal review is made to see if there are any executive directors out there or departments out there who, number one, have funding for a piece of property, or who need this piece of property. It's taken to a committee. Now, this is by our proposed policy and procedure. Then it's taken to a committee. The committee consists of the chief of staff, secretary of state, and the treasurer, with 2 advisors, which those advisors would be administrative support. Right now it's Pat Gwynn from the administrative support staff, as well as myself from Realty Services in an advisory capacity only. The committee determines, after looking at all of the, after looking at the reports prepared by us to proceed or to decline a piece of property. If they agree to proceed, or if the majority of the three agree to proceed, it goes to the principal chief to sign off on. By his signature, it means that Real Estate Services, it confirms that we will go into a contract on the piece of property. And after that, I mean, that, we do the further assessments of it. At that point is when it would reach, if, depending on the grant, on the funding, if it is a grant that requires an appraisal, at that point, an appraisal would be done. Otherwise, comparables would be looked at in the purchase of the property. And we have the technology in the Real Estate Services offices to get that accomplished.
Yes.
I just wanted to make sure that you do a report in-house. You
Yes.
can't call it an appraisal because y'all are not certified appraisers.
Absolutely not. We are not certified appraisers.
But you utilize the standard rule of getting comps within 3 years and within 3 miles of the subject property.
Yes, we certainly
And
do.
From your report, then you all can make an informed determination of what you believe with all of our experience and background in your department, what the value of the property is.
Yes, and the best use of it as well.
Now, do you know of any occasion where the tribe ever bought property for resale?
For resale? No, I'm not aware of any.
So when we buy property to keep, is that right?
That's my understanding, yes, ma'am.
And many times we buy property because of its location. Is that
Yes.
correct?
Correct.
So an appraisal doesn't necessarily do us a whole lot of good because we're not buying it to resell, are we?
Correct.
So what it might be worth today, 100 years from now, it won't matter, will it?
That's correct.
Okay. And that's my biggest problem with saying let's get an appraisal on everything, because what you're using an appraisal for is not what the tribe is using an appraisal for.
That's right.
Thank you.
Council Lady Fulbright?
Yes, thank you. I've thought about this quite a bit, and you could get 3 different appraisers and they'll all give you 3 different amounts. And when we're wanting to build a clinic or something in a particular location, we don't want to build it way out in the boondocks or the sticks. We want to build it where it's accessible in a good location. So the more you advertise it out there amongst the public that you're out there to buy this, the more the price is going to be raised. And I think the way that we're doing it right now is suitable, and I can't support this legislation. Thank you.
Councilor Taylor?
My question was your proposed procedure that you're looking at. Do you have an implementation date that you're shooting for to implement that, or is this just something you're kicking around?
I would defer to Secretary of State on that.
We don't have a date yet. We're still trying to work through the policy as property comes up. We're meeting in the committee that she just described, seeing how that works. Generally, it looks like it's flowing the way it should. We certainly put that policy in place with whatever tweaks are warranted.
Thank you, Chair.
Council Lady Coates?
Thank you. Ms. Brown, resale is not the only reason to have an appraisal, is my understanding. I mean, do we go through the regular process that normally, if I'm buying a home or a piece of property or something like that, I'm going to go through a bank or a mortgage company or a loan lending company of some sort? What sort of process does the Cherokee Nation follow in that regard?
You would have your contract, and then just follow the procedures. If you need to do a NEPA, all your environmentals would be done on that.
Do we typically just pay for a property in cash, and, I mean, just the full amount, or do we go through the lending process with?
That is not up to me. I don't handle any of that. That is prepared by the group that is desires the piece of property.
But sometimes we might do that, to your knowledge?
Like I say, you know, if there's a grant, if they're paying for the properties through a grant, I think I learned this in the training just last week. Many of the grants require an appraisal if they're going to use grant monies.
Right. And most lending companies or lending institutions or whatever will also require an appraisal to make sure that you're not paying some amount that is way off.
Personally, I know that.
Of that appraisal, right, from my personal experience also. That's what I'm going on.
Yes.
That's been my experience as well. So there are actually other reasons to have an appraisal done, and what Councilor Byrd was talking about, you know, that somebody trying to sort of increase the cost of something that they're trying to sell to us once they get notice that we're interested in it might be, in fact, a reason to have an appraisal, because a lending company or a grant or whatever would not probably support that. And I'm just kind of making a statement, I think, rather than asking you anything at this point. But there are other reasons to have appraisals other than simply a resale value. Would that be a fair statement?
If you're borrowing money for it,
If you're
I
borrowing
would
money,
think so.
which we sometimes do. Or if you've got a grant requirement on it of some sort. Okay, thank you, thank you.
Council Lady Fishing Hawk.
Was there any formal process when we did this before now, Jim?
No, not,
In the past, we've never had no formal process.
no, not to my knowledge.
Have we ever borrowed money to buy a piece of land?
In the past 2 years that I've been there, not to my knowledge.
Chuck, could you come up here and talk about this on the business side?
I have questions for the tribal side if we're going to move on.
Well, you can wait your turn. It's my turn now.
Yeah.
Chuck, can you come forward? Can you speak to this piece of legislation on the government side?
Yes, from the business side, the requirement for an appraisal has some pitfalls that we need to be mindful of. Primarily the point of confidentiality and our ability to acquire property without advertising the fact that the businesses are interested in a particular piece of property. That's one concern. Secondly, the usefulness of an appraisal from our perspective is quite different than if we were to buy a house, for example, that was mentioned earlier, where comparables are easy to identify. And the buyer's use of that property is for residential purposes. If we were to buy a parcel of property for purposes of a casino, for example, the value to us as a casino operator versus a non-casino operator is very different. So the usefulness of that appraisal is diminished greatly. So those are two considerations. Now we buy property for a lot of different reasons. Some are to put ourselves in the position to make money, and some are just to protect our interest as a defensive mechanism. So if we have an investment on the northwest corner, and we're concerned that on the northeast corner, there could be a use developed by a third party that negatively impacted the value of our lien, what we would be willing to pay to buy that property on the northeast corner may or may not be considered market based on appraisal. So again, sort of the usefulness of an appraisal from our perspective is limited, and the risk of alerting the market to our interest in a piece of property outweighs whatever usefulness an appraisal would have.
Thank you.
Council Lady Watts.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I understand, and I think I can appreciate what you described for the internal process for Cherokee Nation as a government. And I assume that those documents would be kept with the information around that property, and if people had questions about it, whether it was a citizen or a government official, they could go retrieve those documents or review them and understand how that property was assessed at the time it was bought, and then have the property.
I'm sure they could.
Okay, and in the training for grants, and it said that the grants, a lot of grants will require a appraisal. Did they give any reasoning why the grants would require appraisals?
There are various grants, of course, as you all know, but, some grants do require appraisals, and therefore, the accountant was talking about that tells you anything.
And Mr. Garrett, thank you for being here to answer questions. So I think in the past, we have shell companies that people can or cannot identify, or they're created in order to pursue opportunities for land. Do those folks, is that not something, a possibility that they could seek an appraisal, and therefore the confidentiality portion? Or are you saying that even if we did get an appraisal, that portion would be confidential and not something that we could share with our tribal citizens?
I'm really saying two things. One, the value of the appraisal is extremely limited because it doesn't.
And I appreciated that second, but
Yes.
I'm talking only to the confidentiality at this point. I don't know that I agreed with you on the usefulness in terms of our public understanding whether we're being good stewards of their money or not. I think that's the point of the legislation. But on the confidentiality from CNB's perspective, is it confidentiality in the attempt to purchase, that we don't want it to raise money, which I don't think anything in the act prohibits us from doing that as a shell company or without people's knowledge? Or is it that it's confidential in nature, the value of the property, period, for our public?
Our interest in the property, we try to keep as confidential as possible. Once we engage an appraiser or any third party for that matter, whether it should be disclosed or not, or it should be in public domain or not, it gets there. It is very difficult to maintain confidentiality once we engage a third party.
So does CNB have any kind of process similar to what Ms. Brown has described for Cherokee Nation?
Yes, ma'am. When we are looking to acquire a piece of property, we will engage in an internal business analysis, which in the case of buying property for a business use, let's use a casino for example, we would have done a business analysis as to the profitability of a casino or gaming operation in that particular site, and that would be based on traffic, market studies, theoretical size of the casino, the number of games, etc. And in the case of buying property as a defensive mechanism, it really is how impactful a use would be to, how negatively impactful a use would be to our businesses. So the business case is performed internally. A presentation to the board is made, and the board approves all acquisitions. And that's our process.
Is it similar in that you reach out, because not everything we do is casino.
Correct.
So is it similar that you reach out in 3-mile radius? And you look at and do somewhat of something what maybe an independent appraiser would do to evaluate?
Yes, part of our business analysis will include looking at comparable sales in the area. So we do get data points from past transactions and take that into account before we would agree on the position.
Okay. Thank you very much for your time, both of you. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Council Lady Taylor.
I just want to make a comment that when you are putting together tracts of land that have more than one owners at the time, I personally know for a fact I've paid too much for a particular tract of land because it was in the middle of this tract I already owned and this tract I just bought, but I had to have that piece. And so to look at it from the outside and say, they paid way too much for that piece of property is not really getting a clear picture of the intended use or the whole package to go. Thank you.
Yes, Harley.
Yeah, and I've had thoughts about this legislation, because I know when it's brought up that Cherokee Nation or CNB is going to purchase property, the price generally goes up. Notwithstanding a policy, you know, I really would like to see appraisal on all properties, but I would be willing to look at a different approach if we had the policy today. I would certainly support the policy concept. Without the policy present, you know, I can't support it that way. If they could guarantee us a policy within the next 30 days, I would be happy with that. I mean, sitting here looking at policy, if I see what the policy says, and I agree, you know, if you go to do an appraisal, it's going to go up. There's no doubt about that. But you know, without a policy for me to look at, then I'd have to have I'd like to have an appraisal. You know, just on the side of caution. You know, that's the only reason I want an appraisal. But if we had a policy that would take care of that, I would certainly support the policy because I know exactly what it does if you do the appraisal.
Thank you.
Yes.
Mr. Secretary, you have a comment to that?
Can't add any more than these two folks have added, but the policy is being developed. We've got a committee in place to address these. I'm very impressed with Ginger's very thorough presentation, and I would imagine that if I was on the CNB side, I would say the same thing because they've made some good decisions. So I feel very confident in this.
Just a
Ginger, I appreciate what you're doing. The job that you've done the last 2 years. Chuck, I'm glad to see you in here. I'm glad to see you on the business side of it. You're probably better educated than anybody sitting around this country, as far as I'm concerned. But let's get down to the tooth and toenail of this thing. If you all remember the last administration, in Sequoyah County, it sat there on its hands for months. When it could have went in and bought a property pretty cheap. And the Choctaws come in and hired a firm, and that firm went and bought that property. We didn't even know it was Choctaws. And they took our horses back across the river. And they're still over there. But they bought Blue Ribbon down for a song and a dance that we could have already purchased. Had to mess with it, we could have purchased from the city. And I don't want to, anyway, handcuff the businesses of our nation because they're doing so good right now. And I'm sure that most of you like to look down and look at your paperwork, but I'm telling you, you need to not handcuff these businesses and not handcuff the nation because there's been property bought in the past from administration that was awful high. But I'm telling you, I think Ginger, and I believe in Ginger, and I think she'll do what's right. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Motion and second.
motion to second.
Yeah. Yes, it's the price, no, it's the no.
Got a motion and a second to vote on this. Yes, it's to approve it, and no, it's to vote it down. So we're ready to vote. And
Roll call.
roll call. Shelley?
Joe Byrd,
No.
Julia Coates,
Yes.
Jody Fishinghawk,
No.
Janelle Fulbright,
No.
Tom Garvin,
Yes.
Frankie Hargis,
No.
Hannah Glory Jordan,
No.
Lee Keener,
Yes.
Dick White, Curtis Snell,
No.
Janice Taylor. No. David Thornton,
No.
Victoria Vasquez,
No.
David Walkingstick,
Nope.
Eric Allen Watts,
Yes.
Jack Baker,
Yes.
Harley Buzzard.
Yes.
We have 6 yes and 10 no.
The motion has failed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Moving on down to new business. 14048. Victoria Harley, you can take it?
Make a motion that we pass a resolution authorizing the approval and submission of the Cherokee Nation Forest Management Plan to the Bureau of Indian Affairs.
Second.
Second.
Motion is second.
Also, Pat Glenn is here, and we would like for him to tell us about the plan, and then we might have another statement after that.
Hello, everyone. I'll try to be brief. It's my understanding that we'll probably end up tabling this resolution tonight, so the council will have a longer chance to review the rather voluminous document that's in front of you. But I am here to answer any questions you may have. I would just simply ask you all, when you're reading the document, you need to preface this by the background is that this is a matter of federal law, 25 CFR 163, which is it's an antiquated regulation that was written for a different geographical zone than we live in. But at the end of the day, it's Bureau of Indian Affairs rules and regulations. And we do have to have a forest management plan. You have one in front of you, and I'll be more than happy to answer the questions as best as I can, premising it with the fact that we're starting off with the fact that it is a rather antiquated legal system and framework that we have to work within.
Yes. Kara? Harley?
Harley was first.
I'm familiar with this plan. I think Pat has worked on this plan for probably 10 years. I remember several years ago, Pat was trying to get it done. From what I understand, Pat, and you can be brief about giving us the highlights of this plan. What I've seen in the plan is some of those policies that we have to follow are inherently governmental functions that they can't do away with. Am I correct in saying
Yeah,
that?
and in actuality, in 2008, the Cherokee Nation Forest Management Plan was approved by this body. Unfortunately, 1 month after it was approved, the Bureau of Indian Affairs rescinded their approval and required the plan be rewritten for two different reasons. The main reason they stated was inadequacies within the environmental review process. But in reality, the BIA was always quite unhappy with the fact that we got the plan approved as a Category 4 forest management plan, which would give the tribe a little bit more autonomy and self-determination rights within that plan. And from the get-go, from the very beginning, they wanted the plan drafted and approved as a Category 2 forest management plan. So to answer your question, Harley, we did have the plan approved. They rescinded approval, and since December of 2008, the Bureau has been redrafting this one. They had a draft to me in September, and we've gone through redrafting and edits at the Cherokee Nation's request. We're on draft number 4, and at the end of the day, it's not a bad plan, it's not a good plan, but I think it's probably as good as we can expect under the less than favorable regulatory framework that we all have to live within.
And Pat, can you just tell us briefly what the difference is between a Cat 4 and a Category 2? Or what changed in those two categories?
Yeah, basically a Category 4 plan states that, a Category 2 plan states that you're less than 10,000 acres. And a Category 4 plan is, like, as I said, it's far more open to interpretation by the tribal governmental body. I disagree vehemently that we are a Category 2 forest management plan. We do not have less than 10,000 acres of land. We have 60-ish thousand acres of land. But at the end of the day, it's the BIA that has made their call. They write the plan. It's, as you said, it's an inherently federal function. It's retained within the CFR. The other major difference is that the Cat 4 plan does not talk about three things: a maximum allowable cut, an indicated allowable cut, or an annual allowable cut. The Cat 2 plan mentions one of those, and the current plan you have in front of you mentions an annual allowable cut at 1.5 million board feet. I can assure you that this tribe will be a long time before the timber industry allows for that type of cut. Indian forestry in general is at its lowest rate since the 30s. We all know what happened in the 30s. The timber industry in the Indian timber industry is expected to be underfunded by over $100 million annually. So the Oklahoma timber industry has been gutted. The entire Indian forestry has been gutted. And the forest business in today is in the southeastern United States, raising loblolly pine on a 20-year schedule. And Oklahoma cannot do that based upon our weather realities. So, as I said, we're stuck with a bad set of federal regulations. And until those regulations change, there's not a lot of difference that the Cat 2 versus the Cat 4 plan will do to us. This plan still allows us to retain some common sense salvage operations that when Bruce Davis needs to clear a patch of land, we are allowed to sell that timber at market value and reap the rewards rather than simply bulldozing it up and lighting a torch to it.
And the other thing, and Pat, you can address this real quick, does any of the funding depend on this forest management plan?
That's a two-part question. We get two types of money from the BIA on forestry. We get what's called the actual forest program money that is that's subject to tribal priority allocation, which means we can spend it how we so desire. It's a fairly small amount. It's only $85K per year. Since that was in place during the time that the compact was signed, I'll have to leave it to the legal folks to see if that could be touched. I would argue that it probably could not, but this is the BIA. However, the other fact of the matter is, the other pool of money is the forest development funds, which are not reoccurring, and those are based upon the fiscal health that the United States Treasury has every year. The most we've ever received in one year was $66,000. And in the last couple of years, that figure has ranged from 0 to 20,000. That money would be in jeopardy. But as I said, that's only between 0 and 20,000. And that money is not subject to tribal priority allocation.
Councilor Watts?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Have we been at the table to do consultation with the federal government on these issues?
Formal consultation, no. There are so many sets of regulations that I'm sure the tribe would want to amend and or update. I'm sure 25 CFR 163 falls way low on the table, and that's just simply because the amount of money that the timber industry is going to bring into, or that the state of the timber industry is in. We could always ask to formally consult on that, but those regulations have been in place since for decades, and I don't know how successful we would be.
So this plan won't allow for traditional controlled burns?
Yes, it would. Yes.
It will,
Yeah.
and so we're going to see some of that to help bring huckleberries back, I know in...
Remember, this plan deals with cutting of timber. That's all it deals with. Now, there are ancillary parts of it, like you said, the fire management plan and so forth, but those can be done regardless of what's in this plan.
Okay, so after I have a chance to read it, I'll probably have more questions, of course. Thank you, Pat. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Councilor Coates?
I think Mr. Gwynn addressed some of, I was just going to ask for some examples of the differences between the 4 and the 2, and I think that you already, right after I raised my hand, you kind of went into some of those, so that's,
I think we actually received all the concessions in the Cat 2 plan that we requested in the Cat 4, with the exception of, and it's in the document, you will see that, it shows that the Cherokee Nation disagrees that we are a Cat 4, that a Cat 2 tribe. By the BIA's own definition, we are a Category 4. It's the BIA's plan.
thank you.
Pat, if you know, of the 5 tribes, how many of those are Category 2, Cat 2?
I'm sorry, I don't know. I know that the only one that I know is the Choctaw Nation is a Cat 2 plan. I think under, I don't know what their tribal land inventory is, so they may actually be less than 10,000 acres. I don't know.
Okay. Any other tribes, Chickasaws, are we all in the same category here?
I really don't know. This is the only, I'm only aware of the inventories that we have as a Cherokee Nation. And as Harley says, I've been dealing with this, it seems like, for almost 20 years now. So
Have we tried going through the intertribal to change this policy that we're looking at?
yeah, all tribes have. The Northeast Indian tribes have tried for years to renegotiate these regulations and have gotten nowhere.
Okay, and you're recommending that we table this?
I'd make that recommendation that we table it for 1 month. I really wanted to, and Councilor Vasquez and I talked, we really wanted the other tribal council members on this committee to actually see this document, and apparently a lot of them hadn't seen it yet to get a better understanding. So we'd ask to table it for 1 month, and then next month bring it back with the approval of the document and send it directly to the council that night.
Okay, you had a motion and a second.
I'll make that motion to do that.
Okay, table.
Yes.
Wait just a minute, we got Julia, Julia had a question.
No, you called on me and I was,
Oh, okay.
yeah.
Okay, we got a motion, second on the table. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? It's tabled for 1 month.
Thank you, Pat.
Thank you.
Moving on down to announcements. Got a community meeting at Salina this Saturday afternoon. We start at 5 o'clock, 5 till 8. We're having roast pork or a hog fry, however you want to say it. And
I have an announcement, the rules meeting that we were going to have on the 29th, I'm gonna be out of town, so I moved it to the 28th. Is that correct, Shelley?
For Wednesday?
Day before Wednesday, same time.
Can we just move all of our meetings
I
up
think,
one
I
day?
think that's what you recommended, but Steve.
If you were gonna try to move the one, I would move the other
If we
one too
could.
and put it all on the same day.
No.
No.
Oh, no.
It would just be 2
Yes.
meetings in a packed meeting, I think.
I'll schedule for that day. No.
Julia,
I have an announcement. Yeah.
yes.
Okay. Thursday, we're having a end-of-school picnic over at Bellefonte at 11 a.m. It's a hog fry, and everybody's invited.
When is that, Thursday?
Thursday,
What time? 8
It
o'clock?
looks like-
11 a.m.
Okay.
The end-of-school picnic. It's hog fry.
11 a.m., bring an appetite in the big plate.
Have a good time.
All right,
I think Sequoia High School's gonna teach the kids how to play stickball.
yeah.
Any more announcements?
What's to adjourn?
Second.
I got a motion to adjourn. I hear a second. All in favor?
Aye.
David?
Adjourn.